healthcare system in many ways, like and global patient advocate. Welcome, Dr. Newell.
When it's time to be able to say bye-bye to that doctor and hello to another doctor. So it's all really about the fact that you have got to get involved. You ask the question, how do we do it? Well, telling your symptoms to the doctor, being very honest, being very, very, really just specific. To say, oh, I just don't feel well, doesn't work. You have to be much more specific than that. So one thing, you've got to be able to tell your story. But when you're on the other side of that table, and I've recently been on the other side of that table, it's scary.
Right.
You don't know what the doctor's going to say. You're thinking the worst, certainly if you are a physician. Some people are eternal optimists. I love hanging out with those kind of people. They're likely to be more realistic with the doctor than you are. And when the doctor happens to give you some information that you may not want to hear, you're going to hear only the bad. That companion is going to hear the good. You've got this condition that you really aren't going to hear because you're so frightened.
Right. And it's one of those things when you say having this conversation with your doctor. There's been so many times when my family members call me after they leave the doctor's office and say, hey, what does this mean inside the exam room, and how can they find their voice?
So that's another excellent question. First of all, it's important that you understand that your health is the most important thing that you need to focus on. If you've got a family, you need to focus on your family. But let me tell you, your health comes before that job. I know the job may be paying your health plan, but your health is most important. So you must go in there empowered, just like when you go to the mechanic and tell the mechanic, my car won't start. You don't go in and say, oh, there's something wrong with my car. You say, oh, I was at the stoplight and it went out on me and I couldn't crank it up. You're very specific. When you go to the doctor, you say, I have been having this problem for the last 3 weeks. No matter what medicine I take, whether it's Tylenol, whether it's Motrin, whether it's Tylenol with codeine, no matter what it is that I take, it doesn't make it better. And this makes it better and this makes it worse. You must tell the doctor the story. They teach us in medical school, and you know this, Dr. Hilton. They told us in medical school as students, listen to the patient. They'll tell you everything you need to know. Part of the problem is, as physicians, we're so busy cutting you off. Right. We don't give you a chance to tell you the story. So you must go in there with your story. Imagine that white coat is just part of their costume. Can I call it a costume? Just a costume. It's something to protect the clothes that they have on. There's nothing magical about that white coat. Nothing at all. They're human beings. They got to go home and make dinner, pick up those kids before 6 o'clock, deal with challenging situations, take care of their moms and dad, just like you do. So they are human beings, and we need to think of it that way. They know more about medicine, but if you're an MBA, you know more about finance. And that's the way you've got to think about it. They're just specialists in an area. Okay. So you need to go in there empowered to know that you can ask the questions. Now, if you feel that your doctor or provider is dismissing your question, then one way to deal with it is ask the question in a different way. You know how to phrase questions in a different way. So if you get a funny answer, you just rephrase that question. If the doctor or provider gives you that same funny answer, then sometimes you just need to kind of go there. So are you telling me, doctor, that there's nothing wrong with me? How do you know? Do I need a CT scan? Let the doctor defend the test that you feel that you need. You should not be intimidated about. I have literally had doctors say to me, oh, I don't think you need an updated such and such an imaging study. That's Dr. X. But then when I moved to Dr. Y, and I'm old enough, ladies and gentlemen, that I've had a few encounters with doctors. 25 years ago, I was the advocate there for everyone else. Now I'm going myself and I'm seeing what the situation is like. And I'm telling you what I am seeing is making me say, I cannot stop beating this drum about advocacy. And it's more than to say just advocate. You've got to get in there and know what to do. So if you feel that the doctor is dismissing your questions. And if you feel that they are not hearing you when you ask things differently, and I'll go one step further. If you feel that your doctor is not willing to see you in a timely manner for a condition that you feel is challenging, it's time to get another doctor.
You bring up a good point about the time, because oftentimes it is difficult to get into a doctor's office, right? If you're waiting for an appointment with your doctor, how many days or weeks should you wait before you say, hey, I'm moving on to the next?
Well, let me just tell you what I did. And I'm a doctor. So I have a medical condition. I had an established relationship with a specialist. I had a problem. I called. The wait was 2.5 months.
Wow.
So being the loyal patient that I am, I sat around with the condition saying, oh, I think it can wait. I'll just push myself on through this issue. I really want to get back and see that doctor that knows me. I've got a relationship with him or her. Oh, they must be so busy, until the problem started to explode or spiral. And to tell you the real truth, I got a group of girlfriends. That's another thing that is important that you need to have when you're growing up. And I was getting ready to go growing up, I'm grown. But when I went to go, and we usually have these dinners, we have these birthday dinners, and they've just turned into fun dinners. We talk about everything because our secrets are right there at the table. We leave the table, they never go away from that table. But I knew that particular night that I was going to meet with them. If I came back to that dinner talking about the same problem that I had talked about last month, they were going to say, well, why aren't you practicing what you preach?
Right.
So they quietly motivated me. And I opened up the internet and said, maybe it's time for me to pick a new doctor. And I went in to a different health plan that was covered. And I called. I did not give a lot of detail. I even spoke to a receptionist. It wasn't even a nurse. And I explained my situation. And I said, this is really a second opinion that I'm looking for. And of course, their next question was, well, what's your insurance? I gave them insurance. They came back in less than 3 minutes and said, we've got a doctor that can see you next week.
Wow. If
you want a man. If you want a woman, we can see you the week after that. I was in a condition where I said, I want to see the man. I want to see him next week. I went in to see that doctor. That doctor didn't know me from a can of paint. He addressed my situation and made preparations to treat me for the condition that I had, with no long-standing history, no long-standing relationship, no loyalty to me or him. And that doctor has been available to me. And then just recently, the doctor that I had the appointment with for 2.5 months called on yesterday. Oh, we have an opening. I said, oh, well, no, thank you. I won't need that appointment any longer. I'm seeking care elsewhere. It is your insurance. It is your health. And if you tolerate being pushed, and let me just tell you what they told me. Oh, your doctor has been out. He was out for several weeks. Okay, I'm a medical doctor. When I'm out, I have to have coverage. I can't just disappear and then my responsibilities just kind of go to the air. So, you don't know that as a patient, but you just know you're dealing with whatever your situation is. So sometimes it really is time to go get a fresh pair of lens on your situation and get a new point of view. And just see how you're treated. It's amazing when someone is listening to you as a patient versus somebody that you think is saying, how long is it going to take me to finish with her before I can get on to my next patient? Right. You see that in the body language of the doctor or the provider. And, we need to love what we're doing. Some of us are lucky enough that we pick professions and we love it. Others of us pick professions and after 10 years, we're like, ooh, maybe I need to go do something else. Right. And sometimes I wonder, I call medicine my ministry. I love it. I was lucky that when I was 10 years old, I decided I wanted to do this. And I am old enough to be retired 2 times over. And I love what I do. I love giving people advice. I love coaching people on advocacy. I love empowering people to be able to know how to raise that question and then to get positive results and say, oh my gosh, I walked in there and said, you gave me the pointers or whatever. And that people just feel so good because they're making themselves better. And it's a really good feeling when you can help that process.
Right. You say you were 10 years old. I was 8 years old when I decided I wanted to be a doctor. And I agree with you. Medicine is a ministry, and yours took you literally to the White House, right? In 2004.
Yes, well, sort of indirectly.
Right.
I was appointed under Biden to be on the advisory committee for the Office of Minority Health. And so that was a great opportunity just to be there and to be at that table with other like-minded providers, not just physicians, but providers from across the nation, to be able to allow us to be able to talk about health equity and how we are able to try to improve the care that's provided to those that may be challenged by the kind of care that they get, access to care, and basically understanding healthcare.
And when it comes to that advocacy, particularly with minority health, what are you seeing now? We've had a change of administration. Have you seen any changes in the movement or the progress of minorities receiving care and access?
So what I'm seeing doesn't have a good look to it. The hospitals in many communities are folding. And so that's decreasing the access to healthcare. For many of us, we really don't understand or appreciate the value and the importance of a primary care physician. And so some of us still tend to utilize the emergency room for our care. And so we don't understand why we sit in the ER for 5 hours with a really bad chest cold. But that's because all the gunshot wounds and stab wounds and all those urgent, heart attacks are all going ahead of you. So I'm seeing people that are having trouble getting access to care. I'm having people having the same challenge that I'm having. They're calling for the appointment and they can't get the appointment. And they think that if the appointment is set out 2 to 3 months later, it's okay to wait. Right. They think it's okay to wait. And so they wait. And so here we sit and we still don't get the screening mammography that we're supposed to get. We don't get the screening colonoscopy. I mean, after all, I know very few people that raise their hand and say, hey, I'm in line for the colonoscopy. I can't wait to get it. But you need to have it. We've had huge strides in colon cancer screening and breast cancer screening and more. But you've got to be able to keep those appointments. I'm also seeing people losing their jobs. And as they're losing their jobs, they're losing their health plans. And I'm also seeing people being asked to get high deductible health plans. And so you've got to be able to have money to be able to pay that high deductible $1,500, $2,500 high deductible in order to be able to get access to care. People are also struggling because they're caring for their loved ones. And so their own care is being pushed to the side because they're getting the baby to the doctor and they're getting grandma to the doctor, but they're not going themselves. So I say today to anyone that's listening, put your mask on first. You've got to keep your appointments for your breast exams, your mammographies, your colonoscopies, your immunizations. You've got to be able to do the right things, the preventive things that are going to keep you here. Because guess what? When you're not here, you won't be here to take the baby to the doctor. That care provider for grandma won't be there. So it's challenging. And so some of us are trying to get into the community and debunk some of the myths that are coming out in our world about what's needed and what's not needed. It's challenging. But what's important is people like you, Dr. Hilton, and people that are leading the show, Mr. Martin and others, trusted voices in our community still need to be on programs like this so that people will know that there's very little that's changed about what you need to do. It's just the messaging has changed.
Right. Well, you also gave a very great point when you were talking about your own personal story about healthcare plans, right? You said, I actually looked at my healthcare plan and I picked someone else. Can you explain to people, what do you mean by that? And if that's private insurance only versus Medicaid or Medicare, or is it fluid across all three?
Great question. So there's private insurance, and then there's, of course, Medicare and Medicaid. And what you can know is that there may be 50 doctors that are primary care doctors under your private plan. I don't want to necessarily name one because I'm sure they're not paying for this this audio, so I'm not going to give that to anyone. But the private insurance plans will have a list of doctors, and some of them may be in Decatur, some of them may be in Atlanta, some of them may be in some of the other suburbs of the Atlanta area, or in my area, there'll be some in San Francisco. There's some in Castro Valley. There's some in Oakland. But all of those names of places that I mentioned to you, they're driving distance. Mm-hmm. They're 20, 30 minutes away. And so what you need to do is go online and look in the specialty area under your health plan and find out who are the specialists in cardiology, who are the specialists as primary care doctors, who are the specialists in areas, infectious disease or whatever. So you don't have to keep going to Dr. John Smith, who's on Telegraph Avenue in Timbuktu, Illinois. Right. You can pick a new doctor and go there and see someone else in that specialty. There are, and as it relates to Medicare, I've sort of learned Medicare is a pretty good ticket item if you can live long enough to get it. Medicare is, and then if you happen to get Medicare with a supplement, that's like a American Express card, because that means that you've got a really good insurance plan with Medicare that pays a lot. And then your secondary picks up what Medicare doesn't pay. But Medicare does not just pay for doctors in Decatur. It doesn't just pay for doctors in Atlanta. It pays for doctors across a big span. So that's why you are really in the driver's seat when picking your physician or your provider. You don't have to stick with the same person.
Mm-hmm. And it's one of those, I want to make a very good point about Medicare in particular. You have to enroll in Medicare by age 65. When you turn 65, make sure you're enrolling in Medicare, because if not, it can carry penalties for you that can be for your lifetime. I think that's a point that many people miss. But make sure on your 65th birthday, you have that Medicare card. Now, there's another thing that you talked about, the importance of knowing yourself. And after every health visit, you have these after visit summaries. How important are those for people to read, and what can they gain from those notes?
Okay, so those are great. First of all, you in my plan, they give me the option. Do you want to read it online, or do you want to have it printed? So for many years, I just said, I can read it online. Well, first of all, you got to know where to find it online.
Right.
If you're not familiar with the app, and if you have more than one doctor, you got to figure out how to navigate through that app. That's another story about the digital divide and folks trying to get healthcare. You can rarely pick up the phone and book an appointment. Nowadays, everything's got to be online. But from the standpoint of the after visit summary, I strongly encourage you to read your after visit summaries. And here's why. What's documented in that after visit summary is law and gospel. That's what the provider says took place in the visit. I have actually read my after visit summaries and found that there were things that were documented in the after visit summary that were not accurate. Okay. Now, I'll be picky. One of them was weight. I'll be picky. That's picky, but that's a safe one to talk about. And so if you're monitoring your weight, you know what it is. And what actually happened was they pulled my weight from a previous visit.
Oh.
So it wasn't major. Okay. Uh-huh. But that was one of about 5 things that I happened to pick up that were documented in the after. They mentioned that I was taking a medicine that I really wasn't taking. It was listed as a medication. And they will also put things in that after visit summary because they dictate, because I think they know sometimes that that's what they should say. But did they really say it to you? And it could be just advice.
Well, Dr. Newell Harris, thank you for reminding us that the most important voice in healthcare should always be the patients. And if anyone is listening that says, hey, I don't have an advocate, I would like to find a voice that I can follow on social media that can help guide the way, where could they find you?
You can find me on LinkedIn, Dr. Glenda Speaks. I actually have a page there and you can find me there. Very easy. Dr. Glenda Speaks.
Well, we thank you so much for your voice and we look forward to having you back very soon.
All right. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
You too.
Bye-bye.
And coming up next, autism in children. We will not only help you recognize the signs, but also dispel some of those myths.
I'm Brittany Noble, Midwest-born, HBCU educated with experience in newsrooms across the country. Well, I've teamed up with Roland Martin to bring to you The Breakdown. This isn't just news. It's our stories, our voice, our community. Join me for The Breakdown, Monday through Friday at midday, only on the Black Star Network.
Now, according to the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, autism impacts about 1 in every 31 children. And autism is a neurodevelopmental condition affecting communication, social interaction, and behavior. And it presents itself on a wide spectrum in children, ranging from nonverbal to highly communicative. Joining me now to help understand is board-certified pediatrician, Dr. Echo. Good to see you, Dr. Echo.
Thank you so much for having me, Dr. Hinton. It's a pleasure to be here.
You know, I am super excited to talk about this topic. I just had a set of twins, and I think as all parents, we're watching our twins and our babies develop, and we're thinking, okay, who are they going to be? What is their life going to look like, right? And in the news right now, you see autism everywhere. So can you explain autism to the viewers? How does it show up in children? Does it look the same? Does it look different?
That's a great question. First of all, congratulations on your twins.
Thank you.
And yes, autism shows up differently in boys, in girls, and in different races as well. So what parents can look for in your young children under the age of 2, if your child isn't making eye contact like you think they should, it can also show up as children not responding to their names when being called. It can show up as a child having some strong sensory sensitivities to things like household sounds, like the bathroom noises and the blender or the vacuum cleaner, or strong sensory sensitivities to textures like the tags on their clothes, for example. It can also show up as children wanting to play by themselves, right, and not wanting to really interact with others. It can show up in the ways they may be very picky eaters. It can show up as a speech delay where you think your child should be saying more words than they should at their age, and they're not. And for all of these things, right, it can show up differently in boys versus girls. And we're finding that more and more as girls are aging, we're finding that they can mask their symptoms more. And so often it shows up as a delay in diagnosis. But the bottom line remains that parents, you know your child best. So if there's something you're not sure about, if there's something you're not clear about and you think your child should be doing this and they're not doing this, or you look at other children and they're not doing the same things other children are doing, bring it up to your pediatrician. There's no such thing as a silly question. It's always best to ask. And if your pediatrician dismisses you, you know your child best. Go find another doctor that will listen to you.
Advocacy. We've talked about that previously. And how, if a parent is saying, hey, okay, my kid doesn't really make eye contact, or I call their name and they don't necessarily turn around to look towards my voice. Right. How do we get the child tested? Is there a test for this? Is it a blood test? Is it a questionnaire? How does it work?
So the first thing we want to rule out is a speech delay, or actually a problem with hearing. You want to go to your pediatrician and ask them to test your child's hearing, right? Just to make sure that we're not missing, that's not the issue. And if your child can hear, then the next thing is an evaluation by a speech pathologist, which is a referral that any pediatrician can put in, or a family medicine doctor, so that the speech pathologist can evaluate your child's speech to determine if there is a delay. And if there is a delay, it doesn't automatically mean your child has autism. That's just one of the ways it can show up.
And you know, you say if there's a delay. Now, if we have a 3-month-old, 4-month-old child, they shouldn't be responding, right? At what age should we start to say, hey, this may be something we need to look into?
Great question. So between the ages of 6 months and 9 months is when we start to what we call babbling. So the baby making sounds like mama, dada, like you'd expect. So by the age of 1, you should expect to hear your child be able to say mama distinctly and dada distinctly. So if by 15 months your child hasn't said mama or dada, that's a definite delay. If by 2 your child is unable to say more than 1 or 2 words together, that's a delay. You want to go to your pediatrician and ask for an evaluation for hearing and then for speech.
And at what level do you determine a child needs medication to help intervene or to help with their diagnosis?
You mean the diagnosis for autism?
Right.
So,
Is there any treatment plan for it?
that's a really great question. So there isn't a medication per se just for autism, right? Autism is a brain type and it's developmental. But there are medications that can be given for different symptoms the children have. For example, lots of children with autism have difficulty with sleeping. Lots of children have GI issues, meaning they may have lots of constipation or have lots of abdominal pain. They could have aggressive behaviors, and they may be picky eaters. Those are just some symptoms that are typical amongst a lot of children with autism. So there are medications tailored for those symptoms. In my experience, it's more important to evaluate what the root cause of those symptoms are, right? Because lots of research shows that the gut and the brain are directly connected. And when you can address what's going on in the gut, which directly influences the brain. So for example, inflammation. If the child is eating the wrong foods and their gut is inflamed, their brain is also going to be inflamed, and it can show up as aggressive behavior. It can show up as a difficulty with sleep. So you want to address those things in addition to, if the child does need medication specifically to help them with those symptoms, then that can be started. But I always advise, let's look at the foundation before we put a Band-Aid on top and never really address what's really going on.
And do we know what the cause of autism is? Can you outgrow it if we identify the root, right? If you say, well, if you have a inflammation in the gut, is there a way to treat that and the person will outgrow some of the symptoms, or no?
Great question. With all that's been going on in the news, right? We've heard things like Tylenol caused autism. So research shows across the board that we do not have a single cause for autism. It's a multifactorial, meaning there's multiple factors that go into this diagnosis that we have come up with called autism, right? Genetics plays a role. So if one of your parents has autism, or there's someone else in your family, there's a higher chance that your child can have autism. But also nutritional, environmental things in the environment also play a role, right? But there isn't one thing that we have found. So again, when I make the comment about gut and brain health, that's just one area, right, that we are focusing on. And really, we haven't come up with a cure for autism either. We don't talk about curing it because it is a brain type, right? What we focus on is how can we improve the health of this child, and how can we improve their environment so that they can thrive and be the best version of themselves. And that's really the goal. And so, because it's considered a lifelong neurodevelopmental condition at this point. And so I always advocate for parents. Parents, see your child as who they are, right? They are valuable. They are your child. They just happen to have a different brain type, and they process things around them differently than you probably would. But that doesn't make them less than or less valuable. And the focus really is on what are this child's strengths so that we can boost their strengths, right? Because, for example, I have children in my practice that will hear a song once and they can play it on a piano. Wow. Like, that's a gift, right? So our job as parents is how can we find the gifts that our children have and boost them so that our children can have be the best version of themselves. And I think that's really what the focus should be from a parental standpoint, and so that you can advocate for your child.
Right. And, I think you're tapping into those gifts. It helps everyone around them, right? And you right. Speak about how early intervention is something we should definitely drive towards. Why is it so important? And what kind of therapies can make the biggest difference for not only the children who are diagnosed with autism, but their family who is helping to take care of them?
Yes, I'm so glad you mentioned the family. It's everybody, right? Whatever affects the child affects the entire family. So that's a great question. Early intervention is key because the brain growth is highest in the first 5 years of life. So if we're gonna make any changes, any positive changes for our children, we want to do it in the first 5 years of life. And that's why it's so critical for parents not to say, oh my goodness, I don't want my child to be labeled, because the reality is your child is going to be labeled as a behavioral issue instead of a developmental, like that there's a developmental concern. And that's two different things. Because if your child is labeled as a bad kid, even though they're nowhere close to being a bad kid, then that follows them for life and through school. And so that's why it's so important. Ask the question, seek the help. And I know in lots of states there's an access issue. And that's why I started my practice, because we're waiting 2 years plus. And that's, if you understand how important it is to get support in the first 5 years of life, then you know this child doesn't have time to wait 2-3 years for an evaluation, because that's the only way they can get the support on board. So when we say support, what does that mean? It simply means this: if your child is school age, what are the accommodations we can put in place for your child? So if your child needs one-on-one care or a smaller classroom, or they can go to mainstream classrooms, but they need to be pulled out into a smaller, separate classroom, or they need additional services. And on the other side, it means therapy. So what kinds of therapies help? Speech therapy is crucial to start early. Occupational therapy. Lots of children with autism have fine motor delays, meaning sometimes they have difficulty holding the forks the right way. So if you see your 5-year-old still doing this, that's an indication that they need occupational therapy, because at that age, they should be able to hold the fork properly, right? So you want to get your children in speech therapy and occupational therapy, physical therapy if they need it, right? Sometimes they have low muscle tone and they need a physical therapist. ABA therapy stands for Applied Behavior Analysis Therapy, and that's specialized therapy for children that helps with social skills. It helps improve behaviors. It's not about changing your child, it's about strengthening those social skills that your child needs help with, so that they can thrive in the environment that they live in. And so when you get a medical evaluation done early, then your child has access to the things I've mentioned: the IEP for school, which stands for Individual Education Plan for School, and also the therapies they have access to.
That's incredible information. There are many misconceptions about autism. What's one myth that you wish more parents and the public at large understood just simply isn't true?
That your child is the diagnosis. The first thing I hear lots of parents saying to me is, oh my goodness, did I cause this? Did I do something wrong? And no, the answer to that is no, you didn't do anything wrong, right? It's a different brain type. And it doesn't mean if your child gets the diagnosis, that means they will never be able to take care of themselves. That means they'll never live a full, long, good life. No, that's simply not true. Because again, when you put support in place around your child as early as possible, then there is no telling what your child is capable of, right? The trajectory of your child changes once they have access to therapy. Once you make changes in what your child is eating, they're eating good, whole foods, and then you surround them with therapy and the support that they need. There is no telling. Nobody can tell you what your child is capable of. So parents need to embrace their children. They need to know that their children are capable. They need to find those strengths for their children and boost them. Yes.
Well, Dr. Echo, you have talked on so many things that I know many families, like I said, parents who are brand new, parents who are looking at their 5-year-old saying, hey, have I missed a boat? They're going to have many questions. How can they find you on social media if they needed to just touch base to say, can you point me in the right direction?
Yes, and we're always glad to do that. So we're everywhere, on TikTok, on Facebook, on Instagram, at Glow Pediatrics. You can visit our website. It's glowpediatrics.com. We'll be happy to point you in the right direction.
Well, thank you so much. And we will definitely be having you back soon. This is a huge topic.
Yes, thank you. My pleasure.
And coming up next, one mom is raising not one, but 2 children on the autism spectrum. We'll hear about her journey and how she's turned into a fierce advocate for autism awareness.
y'all. Welcome to The Other Side of Change, only on the Black Star Network and hosted by myself, Bria Baker, and my good sis, Jamira Burley. We are just two millennial women tackling everything at the intersection of politics, gender, and pop culture.
And we don't just settle for commentary. This is about solution-driven dialogue to get us to the world as it could be and not just as it is.
Watch us on the Black Star Network, so tune in to The Other Side of Change.
Now, we heard earlier that autism impacts about 1 in every 31 children, according to the CDC. So what is it like raising children who are on the spectrum? Well, joining me now is Dr. Messina Morris, who is a mom of 5. That in itself deserves a trophy, but she's also a chemist at Morehouse College. So thank you for joining us, Dr. Morris.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and tell us about your children who are impacted by autism. Like, when did you first realize that they were actually on the spectrum?
So my son, Seth, who is now 18 years old, I found out when he was relatively 3 years old, but I had concerns about age 2. Mm-hmm. He talked with his hands. He was really smart, hyperlexic, taught himself how to read, very bright, but he wouldn't interact socially with his other brothers. And he's the 4th son. Okay. So for me, that was concerning. And when we went out in public, there were sounds that would just frighten him. It was almost like a cat crawling up a tree. When we were out in public, he would just kind of run the other way. So those things concerned me. And him talking with his hands, which I realize now was stimming, was a concern for us as well. And then for as much language as he had, he did not continue to develop speech, which was very peculiar because he had a high lexile level, which means that he could read on a high level and comprehend, but he wasn't able to regurgitate that into any language of his own. So it wasn't any language that he was actually just bringing forth without being prompted for that knowledge. So.
And when you mentioned a couple different symptoms that I would want to bring up to say, can you show us examples? You say he spoke with his hands, right? And you also mentioned stimming. What does that mean exactly to you?
So something in his environment was overstimulating him. And the only way that he could release the overstimulation was by rocking and shaking his hands like this. Mm-hmm. Whenever he also would hear loud noises that were regular sounding to us, sometimes he would cover his ears. Mm. He also had sensory feeding issues where like he wouldn't eat certain textured foods, no soft foods, no ice cream, yogurts, nothing soft, mashed potatoes. He would only eat something crunchy or crispy, uniformed like food. Mm. Possibly because of the predictability of it all, is what they say. But he wouldn't eat anything that would be soft to texture. Also, same thing with like the clothes that he put on. They had to be a particular texture or he would literally take them off. Mm. So a lot of different things.
And you said that you kind of had an idea when he was 2 or 3.
Yeah.
How long did it take before he actually got his diagnosis?
Too long. And I was a mother to my 4th son and working on a PhD in biomolecular chemistry. And honestly, I sometimes get on myself like, what did I miss? Mm-hmm. I felt like I advocated for him at the doctor's office. I had great pediatricians around us, but there are 2 things. So it's double layered. As a Black boy, they didn't want to prematurely label him, but because they didn't prematurely label him, he also missed advocacy windows of things like babies can't wait or any early intervention that could have helped him potentially along the way. So we didn't get an official autism diagnosis and we got it through the school until he was age 4. Mm-hmm. And he got a preliminary autistic diagnosis from a psychiatrist, but that was after behaviors had become so pronounced that we had to take him to psychiatry just to get him to sleep. He would stay up 48 hours. He was a danger to himself. He was an eloper. He would bite through cable cords and batteries and couldn't be in a room alone. He didn't feel pain the same way we did. So he would jump off of surfaces, just was a complete danger to himself. And that started, as he continued to get older, that started to be more challenging.
And I know that has to be extremely heartbreaking for a mother to see. What were those signs and symptoms when he was 4 years old still, or was that?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Up until he was age 8, he was not stable behaviorally. He had self-injurious as well as aggressive behaviors. He would hit himself in the head. He would hit others. He would throw things across the room. We went through things that parents don't like to talk about, but I talk about it for one reason. I'm a special needs sibling as well. I had a brother that had autism, had a traumatic brain injury, meningitis at 4 that left him brain damage. So I grew up as a caregiving sibling. I understand the intricacies of taking care of someone who is not developmentally the same age as they should be. And so I understand the nuances of it. But parents need to be aware of fecal smearing. Like I said, eating inanimate objects, children who don't feel pain, or children who don't sleep for 48 to 72 hours at a time. You can never get them still. They're like an Energizer bunny, and their batteries just then run out. Paying attention to eye contact, not listening for their names. They're not just being defiant. You really need to check on their hearing first, and then make sure that they are able to see and hear well. Once you know that, then you need to start looking into other testing mechanisms for autism or autism spectrum disorders. It's so necessary. With our son Cameron, who is now 8 years old, we did a sibling study with him at the age of 20 months. That sibling study saved us so much time because we were able to see the deficits in his development at that particular time, which were speech and fine motor skills. And we were able to target those particular areas, so much so that he walked primarily off the spectrum in a sense. We don't say that he doesn't have an autism diagnosis. I just don't highlight that so much. He's also a gifted child. So he is what we call a twice exceptional child, a child who is highly gifted, but also has some asynchronous development. So he's like a little Sigmund Freud, a little bit. My little Einstein that literally can multiply, divide, do calculus almost at age 8, seriously.
Wow.
And also the child who can barely tie his shoes.
Yeah.
So fine motor skills, he has dysgraphia. His handwriting is almost illegible, but he has a reading level of about a 9th grader. Wow. So you talk about this mathematician, this physics genius, this child is always talking about black holes and astronomy and going to space, and knows all the distance from every planet to the sun, and just all of these things. Loves technology, but also loves to move his body, and is a phenomenal athlete and everything else. But then the same child literally can't hold a pencil or hold a fork correctly. So that's where occupational therapy comes in. That's where you start looking into other ways of accommodating him in school, small school settings, and all of those other kind of things, so that the spirit of who that child is, that brilliance continues to shine through, and you don't then, focus so much on the limitations as you do the strengths of the child.
All right, because there's a numerous amount of strengths that you listed. And, I want to go back to something you mentioned. You said a siblings test. What is that?
Yes. So Marcus Autism Center here in Atlanta, Georgia, always does a sibling study for children who have already been diagnosed with autism. And so they've been doing this study for quite some time now, at least a couple of decades, and they've been following siblings of children who have autism. They also had a Black genetic study testing done. So we signed up our family for both. So we did some genetic testing. We found out that genetically, that's not, it's not a genetic factor in our family per se that is causing the autism. That of the genes that they know of. Let me just say that.
Right.
And but they also have a sibling study, and that sibling study is for children who are siblings, full blood siblings to someone who has autism, and they want to be in this study, and the mothers and fathers sign the children up, and they do eye tracking studies with the children, which is a very new technology, but it watches where the child focuses on the screen when main characters come onto the screen versus peripheral other accessory like characters come on the screen. And so if the child's focus and attention is not pointed to like the main character, then that tells them some things about their ability to focus at a particular age. And there you should have a certain level of focus and able to eliminate some of peripheral like kind of things at a particular level of development. So they do eye tracking studies, but they do blood tests, obviously, and also do all the gamut of the assessments, the parent assessment that you need to do. They do a sensory and play study with them. But for me, as a Black mom, some of the studies that they do on our children are not culturally responsive or appropriate for many minorities, not just Black people. For instance, one of the questions that they ask is to have the child demonstrate how he bathes himself using a doll. For one, our little boys don't play with dolls.
Yeah.
For two, our children don't bathe themselves at 20 months.
Mm-hmm.
I'd never put my child in a tub of water by himself and say, wash your hair and wash your body at 20 months. And so for me, that was totally not on the realm of like anything that I would do. And then I had another parent who is a Chinese American mom who had, when she was getting her testing done for her daughter, was saying the same thing. She was like, we don't allow our children to eat without us feeding them for a while. Mm-hmm. So that them demonstrating particular ways to hold utensils at, 18 months is not something that we allow our children to do. Mm-hmm. Because we serve our children. And so there are some cultural nuance things that show up in these tests that can lower the score and potentially put your child at risk of a diagnosis without it actually being culturally sensitive. And so that's why we need more practitioners and more people of different ethnicities that are aware of and know how to advocate for the right things for their children.
And speaking of advocacy, once your child carried the diagnosis, do you feel like there was support from the doctors, from the schools? You said he was 4 years old. I'm assuming entering into kindergarten and the likes. Were there resources there, or how have you had to speak up to get him what he needed and deserved?
I used to be a very nice mom. I used to be very nice. I believed in education. I'm an educator, of course. And so I have been on the other side of IEP meetings. I've been in support meetings with others and have advocated for my students to get what they needed. It's different when you're on the other side of the table and you're up against a system who the person who barks the loudest gets the most help. Right. Well, I didn't realize that at first. And so I was really, amiable and listening to their plans and what they thought they could get. And something in my gut was saying he's not getting what he needs. And they keep rerouting what he needs. It's always something related to his behavior that may be, not that you have a loud fan or loud lights or, high lights in the room, or that he needs a weighted vest. There's none of these things that I'm hearing about from other parents in other communities that resonate with his needs. If you've met one child with autism, you've met one child with autism. And that's the thing about it is no matter what, the symptoms and how they present themselves will be totally different for every single child. And so you have to really be a student of your child and know what your child needs. And so for me, that meant I'm a letter writer. So I had to put pen to paper and start writing letters saying, my son has this going on. He needs help with fine motor skills. You are supposed to provide occupational therapy at this amount of time. And so you have to know the legal language. You have to know what the law says. So you have to know what IDEA is, Individuals Disabilities Education Act. You have to know what FAPE is, and that's basically like free and appropriate education. You have to know what is proper for your particular child and be able to speak that language back to the people who are trying to protect the funding to give it to the person that does know. And so it took a lot of navigating and getting to be a part of organizations like Autism Speaks. I spent a lot of time working with them. They funded my first community grant, because there's a gap in wages. People who have a lot of money can get a lot of support. People who have little money get Medicaid. People who are in between, like me and my husband, middle class folks that just work. I can't quit my job and get my child to therapy in the middle of the day, all day long. I can't spend 40 hours worth of my deductible money on just paying for my child. I have 4 other children. I also was a caregiver to my mother-in-law. There's no way that I can drive from the south of the city to the north of the city all day long, rip and running, trying to get my child the care that he needs. And I definitely can't get in-home care, because that wasn't even a thing back then. Right. So that was really, really the hardest thing, is trying to navigate all of these systems that do not serve you. It serves someone, but it doesn't serve your situation. And so Autism Speaks allowed me to fund a family camp day for children who were on the spectrum, along with an urban farm. And one of my good sorority sisters and girlfriends helped me, Kaya Dean, helped me put it together. And we had the Center for Puppetry Arts out there. The kids were able to experience what it's like to be at summer camp alongside their family. So it was something for the siblings. It was something for the moms and dads. It was something that was open and outside, and they were able to just be together through this camp experience. And that was just something that I needed in order to find the village of people who were going to be what we call Seth soldiers, my son's village. And that's the one thing I tell parents all the time, is to not just find your village, because these kids need community, but to be a villager too. Make sure that you are also being a good steward of the gifts that are cultivated within that community, and that you don't hide or let stigma pull your child back inward, that you continue to show them outward facing. So Seth is an author. He's a philanthropist. He does a lot of work with his own organization. We talk to him a lot about how to advocate for others. He has low expressive language, so he's limited verbal, but he understands a great deal. So high receptive language. And we have a golf tournament that we do in conjunction with the nonprofit, and we're in our 5th year of doing it and raising money for awareness. And he fields a team, and they get to experience golf. He's participated in Special Olympics every season. He participates in the Sunshine League baseball team in our county. I keep him active because I need for him to have community long beyond my life, because these children will outlive their caregivers, majority of them. They don't have short lifespans because of some kind of disease. I hate to reference like childhood cancer, per se. It's not like that. So they live long lives just like anyone else. And so how do you keep the quality of their lives the same past and beyond their caregivers? And that's how we start talking about advocacy in terms of legacy building. So Seth has a book called Seth Can Do All Things, to help encourage families to look at the things that your kids can do and not so much the things that they can't do, and build upon those skills towards the glory of God. Like build towards those things to build up your family, to see them as they really are in spirit and in truth. And that is a part of what moves me, what continues to allow me to do this work and just continue to grow his person.
Well, Dr. Morgan, thank you so much for sharing your story, a very personal story. If someone wanted to buy Seth's book, where can they go to find it? And so he can speak through his words to other people that may be actually living the life similar to his.
Absolutely. Amazon.com, Seth Can Do All Things by Seth Morris and Dr. Messina Morris. And he's also on Instagram at Seth Soldiers.
Seth Soldiers. Thank you so much. And tell Seth we said hello.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. And coming up next, my next guest is helping us get summertime fine with his detox plans. We'll explain.
A decade of love, joy, and power. Black Voters Matter is 10 years old, and we are just getting started. This is love with a purpose. This is Black joy in motion. This is unstoppable power. Across campuses, neighborhoods, and back roads, let's go! We show up not just to vote, but to be seen, to be heard, to belong. We ride together, we organize together. We remind each other that our voices matter, because they always have. Black Voters Matter is about more than ballots. It's about housing and healthcare, clean water and living wages, education, reproductive freedom, and dignity. It's about turning pain into action, turning belief into movement, turning community into power. We don't wait to be invited. We bring the energy. We bring the love. We bring the people. Because when Black communities come together, we don't just survive, we thrive. This is how change happens. This is how history moves. We organize, we build, we win.
So the weather is getting warmer and people are starting to focus on their bodies as summer approaches. And many choose to detox as their choice to slim down. So we want to ensure you're doing it correctly. So joining me now is Dr. Holistic, Dr. Bobby Price. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Bobby.
I appreciate you for having me. Looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, well, the conversation is going to be rampant, right? Because what are the rules to detoxing the right way? We see these trends on TikTok and Instagram and Facebook that say, hey, this is a new hottest way to get your body slim. What should we actually be looking out for?
Well, first and foremost, I know there's probably 1,000 different detoxes out there. So I think what's important to understand first is what isn't a detox. So a detox isn't just removing certain foods, even that's good because most of what people eat today isn't healthy. It's not a colonic because, your colon is only 7 feet of your digestive tract, which is about 30 to 35 feet. It is not just juicing. It is not an enema. It is not just that thing. What it is you have to remove waste and toxicity from the body. And if you're not doing that, you're not detoxing. So that means that you have to open up the elimination channels. That means you got to open up your digestive tract so you have bowel movements. You got to increase, the removal of uric acid from the kidneys. You got to increase the removal of waste from the lymphatic system. You have to upregulate your liver and get waste out of your liver as well, too. Also your gallbladder. So it's about jump-starting the detox organs and also opening up the elimination pathways to be able to get waste out of the body, because most people have about 10 to 25 pounds of undigested fecal matter rotting and fermenting in their gut that they call a poop belly. And if you don't get that out, along with the heavy metals, the parasites, the candida, you know, that waste that I was talking about in the gut and many other things, then you're not really detoxing. And that's what you have to do if you're going to do a detox.
You said 10 to 25 pounds?
10 to 25 pounds. Most
Okay, how do you address that? You know, many of these detox products say, hey, we can get rid of all that really quickly.
Yeah.
What are some of the red flags that you say, hey, if you see this, absolutely go in the other direction. It's not going to be safe for you.
Yeah, so if you see a detox program and it says it's 3 days, 2 days, that's not a detox. All right. And the reason why I say that is because it takes time for your body to go through the phases of detoxification. And you don't want to dump all the waste out in one setting over a weekend. You want it to happen over time. All right. So that it's safe. You got to remember, we're not just removing poop, we're removing heavy metals, removing things from the body that if we pull them all out at once, it could be very dangerous. So that's one red flag. Another red flag could be a lot of people, when they are doing a detox, a lot of what they're doing for the detox is a lot of stimulants in the products like caffeine and things of that nature. And these are the kind of things that unfortunately can give you a rapid heartbeat, could give you high blood pressure, things of that nature. So you want to be careful with those type of things. So when I recommend people start to do a detox, what you want to do is something that is completely natural and that you're not allergic to. Okay. So you always have to check to make sure that there's nothing in there that you are allergic to. Because one of the ingredients, even in mine, is black walnut hull, which is an anti-parasitic and has been used by our ancestors for hundreds of years. But if you have a nut allergy, it could be a potential for you to not want to do the detox for that reason.
Yeah. And when you mentioned many different organ systems, the lymphatic system, the kidneys, the liver, your skin, your gut, can you detox all those things at once?
Absolutely. Well, think about this. All those systems, although they're segregated and compartmentalized into individual systems, they all work together. They're really one system. It's just that we don't have the understanding as human beings to see them as one. So we have to compartmentalize them. So when your liver works, if your kidney doesn't work, all the waste backs up into your liver. It backs up into your digestive system. So all of those things are happening simultaneously. What I always compare it to is like, imagine Michael Jordan or LeBron James going down on a break, and then he crosses over to the left, spins around to the right, then fakes a pass to the left, and then goes back over and lays it up with the left hand. All of those things are happening individually, but also happening simultaneously in one sequence. And so the body really works together like a symphony. And when one note is removed, it makes the whole entire song not really function well. Yeah.
And what are some of those signs that you're not functioning well, right? How do you know if I am toxic at this point and I need to start thinking about a detox?
Okay, got you. So when you start to have skin issues, all right, that's a big sign, because I always tell people your skin is really your third kidney. Okay, so your kidney is getting rid of uric acid, urine. All right, so when people have skin issues, what are they having? Hives, acne, pus coming out of the skin. These are things, this is your skin filtering waste out of the body. All right. Now that waste would normally go out through another route, but because it's backed up or stagnant, now it's coming out through the skin. So your skin is a telltale sign it's time to detox. Your eyes, when your eyes start to get very discolored, that's a telltale sign. The coating of your tongue in the morning, if you scrape your tongue in the morning and it has a whole bunch of white mucus on it or looks white, that's a telltale sign. Also, an itchy anus, okay? An itchy anus is a sign of parasites, okay? So that's a telltale sign. Also, when you start to try to lose weight, but everything you do, you cannot lose weight, that's probably a sign too. Because what most people don't understand about most toxins that come through the food, that come through water, et cetera, most toxins are fat soluble. They go into the fat. All right. So once those toxins go into the fat, it's doing that to actually protect you. Because if these toxins were in the bloodstream, then you will become septic and you wouldn't live very long. So in the fat is really sort of protecting you. But the issue is, as you start to burn the fat, now that toxicity is coming out into the system. So if the elimination organs are backed up, which for most people, they're backed up, this is why I say when you do a detox, it has to open up these elimination pathways. If you're losing weight and you're not actually open up these elimination pathways, your body is going to be resistant to you losing weight. Okay, it's going to see it as a stress. And let's say you lose weight. Okay, you could do this a number of ways. If you force the weight loss, this is when you see people, end up having skin issues, having arrhythmias, saggy skin. The issues go on, and you can always tell when somebody didn't naturally lose weight. So.
And one of the things that you oftentimes hear people say if you want to remove, these toxins and waste, that we need to drink a lot of water, right?
Yeah.
And I know you said we should actually eat our water. What do you mean by that?
Yeah. So, unfortunately, most people think that hydration only comes through liquid form, that kind of, but, just think about watermelon. Watermelon is about 92% water. Cucumber, about 90% water. Lettuce, 90% water. And these are the things that a lot of people don't consume enough of, or when they do consume it, it's actually cooked. And when you cook anything, you dehydrate it. That's why I give everybody the example. What's the difference between a grape and a raisin? The only difference is hydration, but the raisin looks very wrinkled, right? So when you eat the raisin, your body literally has to take it back through the process of becoming a grape again to hydrate it. Okay, so that's why it's so important when you are detoxing, you have to not only drink enough water. So that's why with my detox, you're actually drinking 2 32-ounce teas every day. So you're getting 64 ounces of water every day. But also the foods that I'm recommending are very hydrating as well too. Because the way that we remove waste, 70% of our bowel movement is water. Urine is water. When things come out through your skin, it's water. Okay, so when we sweat, when we get rid of waste, that's water. So if you're not drinking enough water, you're not going to be able to remove the waste, and the toxicity is going to concentrate in your body, and you're going to have these symptoms, these detox symptoms. And all it's saying is, hey, the waste is ready to move, but we don't have a way to move it.
And can you explain when you say detox symptoms? What are they?
So some of the detox symptoms would be feeling nauseous, having leg cramps, a dull headache, feeling fatigued or, lethargic. I've even had people get swollen tonsils. Tonsils. And I explain that to people because people have to understand all the lymph nodes in your body are like little toilet stools. Okay. They dump out waste. That's why all the lymph nodes are in the folds of the body, under the arms, under the neck, in the waist, in the groin, behind the knee. They're there because that's where you sweat the most. Okay. So whenever they get swollen, what it's telling you is that the waste is backed up, but it's also probably telling you that you have an infection that lymphocytes are there attacking as well too. But if that waste is flowing out like it should, then everything will be fine. But it could be a die-off symptom because, you're stagnant, and you're having some of these detox symptoms.
Now, there might be someone listening right now that says, hey, I know that I am backed up, right? Should I be detoxing? Is there a protocol or some red flag that says, hey, this person should be detoxing and this person, you're not ready to start a detox program yet, right?
Yeah.
Is there anything they should be looking out for?
Well, there's a couple of things. So first of all, I always tell people, I even tell people with my detox, I'm like, let your doctor see it. You know, because one of the biggest things that most physicians are going to be concerned with is is there any kind of stimulants in this? Again, caffeine and other things like that are going to make your heartbeat race, et cetera, et cetera. All right. So if they see that it's all natural ingredients and there's no herbs in there that are contraindicated towards any of the prescriptions that they're on, then they're in 90% of the cases, they're going to just say, okay, this looks pretty good. You'll be fine. Okay. So that's the first thing. I always recommend that because, again, like I'll give you for instance, if you're on blood thinners, and my recommendation while you're on the detox is to consume things that are, you know, high in water content, which green leafy vegetables are, then that's a concern. Okay, so you got to address that. So that's a potential red flag. Let's say that you got a gastric bypass or you have kidney issues and you're water restricted, then that could be a potential, you know, concern as well too. All right, because again, you're on my detox, you're going to be drinking 64 ounces of water. All right. Also, if you have been recently sick, you know, you want to let your body recover before you start a detox, because a detox takes resources from the body. It takes resources to be able to remove certain waste. And so you want to make sure if you've been sick recently or hospitalized recently, you want to make sure you sort of get yourself back up to your normal self before you start the detox as well, too.
Now, if someone says, okay, well, I'm on blood thinners, so I can't do this, or I have kidney dysfunction, I can't do this, or, hey, I just had a baby, so I don't know if I can do this fully. If they don't want to do a full detox program, is there something they could do as far as a few simple daily habits that can start their bodies to naturally start to eliminate some of these toxins?
Well, the biggest thing they can do is stop putting toxins in their body. Like that's the biggest thing that you could do. Because if your body is screaming that it's toxic, it's because you've been putting toxic things in there.
Right.
So that's the most important thing you could do. And people, listen, when I talk to people, I said, you tell me why you toxic.
Now, see, you do it.
I'm like, yeah, just keep it real with me. Because the thing is, like, people love to lie. As soon as they get around me, they're like, oh, I ate a salad today. Oh, you ate a salad today. All right. So the first thing you need to do is stop being toxic. Stop eating toxic food. You know what they are. All right. I don't got to tell you what they are. The next thing you could do, you know, other than that is start to sweat, poop, and pee. All right. That's eliminating waste. All right. If you want to sweat, that means you need to be outside in the sun. You need to exercise. You can jump in the sauna. All right. If you need to poop, it means you need to eat healthy. Your body will not poop if you're eating things that don't have fiber and it doesn't have water. All right. And most of the American diet, 69%, is ultra processed foods. All right. That means that all the fiber and all the water has been removed from it. All right. So that's really important as well, too. And then the P part is stay hydrated, you know, stay away from sugar because sugar will dehydrate you. Be careful with the coffee and the caffeine because even though that is a liquid beverage, they will dehydrate you as well, too.
We need to sweat, poop, and pee. Oh, and if people say, okay, I'm sweating, I'm pooping, I'm peeing. I know you have a detox group that you've mentioned, Summertime Fine.
Yeah.
What exactly is that? How can people become a part of that group, right? And is there an online platform? Where do they go?
So for the past 8 years, I've been doing a group detox 3 times a year. Okay. One of my most popular ones is the one that I do in May because, you know, as soon as spring hits and the winter is gone, people start thinking about their summertime vacations and how they're going to look in their bathing suit and their swimming trunks. And they're thinking about they're going on this vacation. They got to take off their shirt. And so they're trying to figure out how to get their whole life together in the span of a month or two.
Right.
Now, I'm not saying that I could do that for you, but what I can say is this. That group detox, again, for the last 30 days, I've seen people normalize their blood pressure, normalize their blood sugars, get rid of aches and pains and inflammation, get rid of cravings and the emotional eating, and get a new sort of sense of what it means to be healthy, because people don't understand your ability to care for yourself is how you will be able to fall back in love with yourself. And so I created this group. We have an online support group. Again, 1,700 to 2,000 people in there encouraging you, motivating you. You're eating healthy. You can come in there and say, today, I don't want to do the detox. People do that all the time. And they get encouraged. And by day 30, they have a totally different point of view because they've gotten all the waste out of their body. They've gotten all the parasites out of their body that are actually telling them that they want the cheeseburger and they want the sugary, the creamy, the salty, the crunchy. Okay, that's just a totally different transformation. So I have one coming up. Again, it starts May 1st. The deadline to join is April 14th. And would love to see everybody in there and start their transformation with me. And I guide them through the process. They can go to drbobbyprice.com to sign up, the 30-day group detox.
Well, Dr. Bobby, you're going to have 2001. When we sign up, drbobbyprice.com, you say?
Yeah, drbobbyprice.com.
Well, thank you for helping us to separate the fact from the fiction, to know that we need to sweat, poop, and pee. Those are 3 things we need to do. And if you're a listener, go to the website, sign up, detoxing, healthy lifestyle. It's all the rage in 2026. Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Bobby.
All right, give thanks.
And still to come, my prescription of the week.
I'm Brittany Noble, Midwest-born, HBCU educated with experience in newsrooms across the country. Well, I've teamed up with Roland Martin to bring to you The Breakdown. This isn't just news. It's our stories, our voice, our community. Join me for The Breakdown, Monday through Friday at midday, only on the Black Star Network.
So let's talk about brain development, because the brain doesn't just appear fully formed, right? It's something that grows, connects, and adapts from the very beginning of life. In fact, by the time a child is 3 years old, their brain has already formed billions of neural connections. These connections help control how we communicate, how we learn and interact with others, and understand the world around us. And during those early years, the brain is incredibly flexible. It's constantly building and redefining pathways based on genetics, environment, and experiences. That's why early childhood is such a critical time for development. And this is where the conversation about autism often comes in, right? Autism, or autism spectrum disorder, is a neurodevelopmental difference that affects how the brain processes communication, behavior, and social interactions. It's called a spectrum because every individual experiences it differently. And research over the past decade has taught us that autism begins very early in brain development, often before birth. And studies using brain imaging suggest that some children who develop autism may experience differences in how certain brain regions grow or connect during infancy and early childhood. Scientists also know that genetics play a major role. Hundreds of genes have been linked to autism, many of those involved in how brain cells communicate and form connections. But there's something equally important to say, that autism is not caused by parenting. And decades of research have shown that vaccines do not cause autism. What we're learning instead is that autism reflects natural differences in how brains were wired. And some individuals may need extra support with communication or sensory processing, while others may have strengths in areas like pattern recognition, memory, creativity, or deep focus. The key is recognizing differences early. So early screening and supportive therapies can help children develop skills and confidence as their brain continues to grow. So brain development, it is very complex, and autism is a part of that complexity. And understanding it helps us support every child's potential. Because when we understand how the brain grows, we can better support the people who live with those differences every day. And that, my friends, is my prescription of the week. Thank you all for watching, and be sure to tune in next week on Second Opinion.